Hi, this is Silona involved with the League of Technical Voters, and I'm here talking with Joseph Smarr from Plaxo.
Hey.
And Bob Blakely, Burton Group.
Burton Group.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, first of all, we all got together in August to talk about, the Transparent Federal Budget Project and working on this free and open source social network and what some of that architecture might be looking like.
It's been a really exciting time. I mean, actually thinking back to when it was like August or September or something like that, the amount of progress that the community has made on all those technologies we were talking about, OpenID and online identity consolidation and friendless portability and all that kind of stuff. It's been faster than even optimists like me would have thought. I think there were a number of us, most of us you invited, who were kind of early into that stuff, but it was certainly not what I would consider a mainstream topic of discussion.
Exactly.
And now I would say it's on everybody's mind. So much of the technical building blocks have sort of fallen into place now. So all that sort of thing about when you show up and you want to comment on a piece of legislation, and it's like, how do you really show who you are and what your affiliation is and what your organization is, and how do you not just sort of start over from scratch but actually bring your reputation from other sites and from other services in. That's all stuff that I think we now actually have pretty good answers for. So I'm really excited about how this is all going to play out.
Yeah,
I guess I'd like to inject a note of caution about that. So there are lots of organizations out there that are becoming OpenID issuers, and those organizations implement the protocol correctly, but the protocol doesn't really make you say anything about whether you undertake any investigations before issuing an OpenID to ensure that the person you're issuing it to, for example, actually exists. We've just invented fire, okay? and fire is very ambivalent.
Like we may be onto something here.
It's extremely useful, but we're probably going to lose a few experimenters along the way.
Yeah.
Yes,
This is something we've been talking about a lot lately, which I think you hit on quite right, which is sort of where are the boundaries between where we need sort of technical solutions and where we just sort of need sort of social contracts that prevent stuff. So, you sort of think about the real world of, you just gave me your business card, right? And, you sort of had certain things you intended me to do and not do, but there was no sort of DRM on that business card that said you can put it in Outlook but not in Lotus, or you can put it in, right? But, and maybe I could even put it up on a billboard, right? But the reason I don't do it is because, we have a reputation and I want that trust to last and so forth, right? And so there's clearly, real issues in terms of privacy and sharing and when I gave that to you, what did I expect you could do with it? And if all of a sudden that changes, would I have changed my mind?
Social structures are going to be the only stable solution to this problem. Can we do things in the design of the technology that will minimize, the number of casualties along the way to getting to that stable set of social structures?
No, that's a good point. Yeah, how do you make sure that when there is something that goes wrong, it's not across the entire network of millions of users? But
And talking about the free and open source social network, I've had 2 banks contact me. Why? Because of the fact that now we're talking about looking at something that actually has reputation currency. And, we suddenly have some very serious repercussions in regards to identity that we didn't have previously. Because to be quite, and I'm probably going to piss some people off on this, but, right now OpenID, it's a toy. Right, and it's in many ways it's a toy because what we're doing now is we're using it for all these different social networks. It doesn't have that real impact that something like banking and government will have on your life.
I think the point is there's going to be a scale, though, right? I think it's already good enough for some things, and it's already better in a lot of ways than starting up for separate username and passwords everywhere and sharing that stuff around, right?
Exactly.
So I think everybody.
Liberty Alliance is working on these identity assurance standards, and I think that's a quite important.
Assertion strength and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
But OpenID isn't a toy, okay? It's really important to understand what it is. It's a power tool without a safety guard. Okay? So there are things that it can do, that are quite sophisticated, but it has all of these failure modes that it doesn't warn you about and that are not yet fixed.
So OpenID just went to sort of version 2.0, as of December.
Right.
And one of the things that was really interesting about that is you've got a lot of companies like people at Yahoo and AOL and Google and others who said, we took a look at OpenID and there was sort of the following kind of privacy and usability and et cetera issues where they were kind of blocking us from really supporting that. And actually a lot of that stuff got into the OpenID 2.0 spec.
But Yahoo's case is an interesting one, right? Because they are so far
part of that evolution.
Well, but so far they're issuing OpenIDs but not accepting them for logons to their accounts. So they think, that they...
It's sort of the easier first step to take.
Well,
it's valuable for the rest of the web, right? Because almost everybody has a Yahoo account.
And it's valuable for the rest of the web for the things that OpenID was currently designed for, commenting on blogs and what have you, where there's not a lot of value at
That's
stake.
what I meant more by the toy,
right.
is the fact that what we're using it right now is for a lot of our little applications like Facebook or any of the social media stuff,
Yeah.
where it doesn't like
Not as high-value
destroy your
transactions.
life
Yeah.
like a bank
Right.
account or your
So-
governmental
But I mean,
ID.
you should be careful about that, right? So my daughter Laura, who you've
Yep,
both met,
sure.
It calls Facebook the most efficient relationship destruction service on the face of the earth. Right? So it's commenting on a blog is
I mean, I
considerably
can tell you
less
as someone who manages millions of users' address book and calendar data, that's very important personal data to them, right?
It
It's like
is.
Exactly, yeah.
they care
Yeah.
a lot about it. And that's what we've always tried to think about ourselves more as like a financial thing than like a social network or whatever. It's like this is stuff that you really have to care about.
And we're going to, and I've already talked to some of the open source notables about creating a new open source license, which basically says you can go in and use these open source tools that we're doing and all this identity stuff, but you have to follow user agreements in regards to what you do with that data.
But I really like this idea because the previous open source licenses have had the concept that they're essentially trying to constrain commercial and creative behavior, whereas you're
Yeah.
trying to constrain social behavior.
Social behavior in
That's
regards
really
to the data.
interesting. Yeah.
In regards to the data and like sitting there and
It's
that's
sort of a downstream effect.
Yeah.
but
yeah.
So this is this is enshrining Google's motto in the code license. Don't be evil or we'll sue you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one and it's funny that I'm going and taking something odd like patent law to do it,
Right.
And,
But-
absolutely, yeah. But if I want to slap your face on the back pocket of a million pairs of blue jeans as
Right.
a brand identity, I have to pay you to
Right.
do that.
Right.
So,
Right.
but those areas of the law, the
very
uses
fuzzy.
of those things to protect data are not very worked
Right.
out.
Right. And yet it's kind of like Tim O'Reilly says, like data is the intel inside of the new web and all that
Yes.
sort of like if you don't figure that out, then just having the open source code is not necessarily going to be that important. Right? Like Twitter, the code is fairly like the UI is fairly basic, right? I mean, there's obviously some sophisticated scaling stuff, but really it's the community and the data that makes it such a compelling app.
Well, and so this is one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about, Joseph. I mean, I think, the thing that we're missing, or a thing that we're missing, because I'm never sure when we're done,
right.
in-
the only thing left that we're missing.
in this whole, Web 2.0, Identity 2.0 area, is we have the notion now of identities as first-class objects. What we don't have is the notion of relationships as first-class objects. And I think the problem that arose with Scoble was that if there had been a relationship object there, so that when
that you could query and get attributes about and so
right,
forth.
and so like you and I, when we create this friend relationship
Right.
on Facebook and we put the data into it, we do it, wrapped up in an object that comes with a set of social understandings about what will be done. Right? Because there was this
Right.
whole stupid discussion about who owns identity information
Right.
after that, and the
Right.
correct answer is it's the wrong question, right? Assigning ownership to the information that Scoble scraped
Right.
does not help you to solve the problem that was created.
Right.
there.
Well, it's not fundamentally about ownership. It's about if you have access to this, does that mean I can take it and do other things with it, or is
That's
it sort
right.
of
It's about-
access within this scope, or what?
Because when we create a relationship, we create a set of expectations, and that set
Yeah.
of expectations should be memorialized in this first.
and that's where we get into that social thing.
And I
right?
really want to work on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay.
sounds like you guys did
And
work.
yeah, definitely. And actually, I have a presentation that I would love a lot of your input on. I'm calling it "Who Owns What Data," and talking about the
Yeah.
different kinds of data that we're doing, because we need to start businesses looking at in regards to what their data structures are going to look like, because like they're not prepared for open social, and they're certainly
Right.
not prepared for step 5 of
Right.
Brad's
Right.
5-step process, and he's
Right.
only done step 1 of his
Right.
5-step process, right?
Right.
So we need to get businesses more prepared in regards
Right.
to what is public data, what's legally public, what's legally private, and then that really tricky piece of what's personal and what's business.
And the relationship between what's legally public and what you ought not to do anyway, even though you have a legal right to do it, is the one where
Right.
we're going to have these really interesting discussions with corporations and with individuals and with governments, because the legal rules can hurt you really badly. If you want to take the attitude that, well, I will do anything that's legal,
Right.
then
was legal.
right, you're a monster if you do that, right? I
Right.
mean, this is
Right.
literally
This is like
mythological
the me
monsters.
putting your business card up on a billboard. It's like I can do it, but
There's a company
there's
that,
good reasons
there's
why I
a
don't.
company that pays you to enter my business card
Right.
information into their site so that they can build a database of business
Right.
card information. I blogged this.
Right. Right.
Morally unacceptable.
Right.
Morally unacceptable.
Well,
People love it.
But I have to wrap it up. Thank you both for coming. I really appreciate it. And have fun at South by Southwest.
Yeah. Cool. Clearly, a lot of good discussions to be had still.
Thanks very
Yeah.
much.